Hey Grace family, and welcome back to our Midweek check-in. So last Sunday I talked a little bit about labels, how we can be wrongly labeled from maybe a bad first impression or just something that went wrong, and certainly how we can label others for the same reasons, and those labels tend to stick. You know, we live in a time and a culture where there's been so many opportunities, unfortunately, that we've created where it's an us versus them mentality. You know, it can be us versus them in terms of race, it can be us versus them in terms of politics or religion, or you pick the category and it seems like our culture's created an us versus them mentality. And what that does, even for the believing heart, is that causes our heart to kind of grow cold, and we see the them, whoever they are in that set of circumstance, as being the enemy, and we put a label on them and we tend to distance ourselves from them. You know, John Maxwell once said, we need to put a 10 on everyone's forehead. And he kind of talks about doing that in terms of seeing people for their potential, not based on their current set of circumstances. Last Sunday, in my own words, I said we need to see people not for their limitations, but for who they can be in Christ. That's what God did for us. He didn't see us in our sin and our rebellion against Him and label us and move on from us. He saw us for who we could be in Him, and then He chased after us to give us that new life in Him. You know, in Matthew chapter 9 and verse 36, it's talking about Jesus, and it says, He saw the crowds and He had compassion on them. When is the last time you saw the crowds, the them, whoever they are, and you had compassion on them? And that compassion moved you towards them to love them where they're at and speak gospel truth into their life. You know, last Sunday we talked about how the gospel is for everyone, every day. And I want to encourage you, church, we have to be willing to apply the gospel to our heart and our lives every single day, so that we can then apply the gospel to the hearts and lives of those around us. The only way we're going to see any kind of change in our culture is not from a different shift in an us versus them mentality. The only way we're going to see change is for the gospel to advance in the hearts and lives of people. And we have to be willing to play our role in that. So I want to encourage you again, church, apply the gospel to your heart and your life so you can then apply the gospel to those around you. Put a 10 on their forehead. Have compassion on them. See them not for their limitations, but for who they can be in Christ, and then pursue them and speak gospel truth into their lives. Introduce Jesus to them so that His gospel can advance. So church, you have a great rest of your week. Live in that truth, share that truth, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here Sunday morning at 9 a.m.